Hello everyone and welcome to another Creative Design Team YouTube collaboration. And of course, because it's July, we are going to do some Christmas in July projects. I will have a playlist below so that you can click on that and see what has gone before me, and also the videos that are coming up after me as well, so you won't miss out on anything. And I will also have a link below to everything that I'm using today. Now you can see from what I've got in front of me that I'm going to be concentrating on the Sprigs and Leaves slimline elements. There's a Sprigs and Leaves thin cut, there's Sprigs and Leaves stencil, so this is a layered stencil, and there's also a Sprigs and Leaves embossing folder, and they are all designed to work with slimline cards perfectly. And as you might see from this, I've actually labelled mine so that I know which direction to put everything, I know which way to run everything through my die cutting machine and how to stencil it as well. All of these products are available as a bundle as well. And there is also a stamp set as well. And the sizing of the stamp set means that it all works beautifully with all of these products. So if you ink everything up and then you want to stamp over top, you can run this through your die cutting machine, and the leaves here are exactly the same size as what's in the stamp set. However, something to note is the stamp set itself is not included in the bundle at all, so that's a separate item. I can see myself using this over and over and over again. At the moment of doing this recording, these products have actually sold out, most of them. I think the stencils are still available and the stamp set, but the embossing folder and the thin cut have sold out. But there is more stock coming in sometime this month from close to my heart. What I'm going to concentrate on today is the stencils. I'm not going to use the thin cut or the embossing folder for this video, and I'm going to show 3 different ways of using the stencils to get different looks to it, and then I'll bring in some artwork to show you. And I'm also going to work on a page in my Days of December album 2022 last year. I have a confession, I haven't finished this off. So one of the pieces of artwork that I'm going to create today is going to be used in this book here. Quite often when I get a new stencil, I just bring in some white daisy cardstock and I just start playing. So the first one I'm going to do is this big open leaf area. You can see with this one, if I lay this over the top, you're going to get shading, and I thought it would be fun to show you how you can ink this up in several different ways to get different looks. I've gone ahead and I've placed the stencil over top of some white daisy, and I am just using some painter's tape here to hold it in place. And I've put some tape here because I don't want to go over the edge. So I'm just going to ink this up first. I'm using Seabrook ink. I'm not pressing too heavily, but I'm being quite careful because these are quite delicate pieces. So sometimes it's better to go almost like with the grain of the stencil, I suppose you'd say, and sweep it down like this so you don't lift up those delicate edges. And I'm thinking you can get a little sneak peek if I pull that back as to how that's looking. I'm using Seabrook ink, it's just one colour, but you do get light and shade from the edges of the stencil pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and ink up this whole entire section. All I need to do is pick my stencil up and move it down to create a 12-inch border. And then I'll be back with another colour to show you the effect that you can get, not with this layered part, but just with this one stencil, just to give a bit more light and shade to these leaves. So you can see that's one panel done. All I need to do now is move this down. I'm going to go fairly close to that previous blending and secure that down with my tape. And this time I'm just going to mask off this edge here so that I don't get any carryover with the ink into that section. I'm not worrying about this edge too much at all because I'm going to be cutting this down. If I was wanting it to use straight onto a page like this, I would mask this side as well, just in case my blending brush goes over the edge. And before I move this off, I'm going to come in with a darker colour. So I'm going to choose Mist ink. I don't really need to wipe my stencil off because Seabrook is quite light, so it's not going to bother the Mist ink at all. Now I've got a fairly big brush here for Mist, so all I'm doing is inking up this section here, and I'm just going to drag it in just a little bit onto the edges of these leaves and try not to get the whole entire leaf coloured up. Actually, what I think I'm going to do is come in with this small little brush here and just drag some into the edges. I just want a little bit of mist coming in to all these sections. I'm not worrying about blending it too much, because when you look at leaves in nature, there is a lot of light and shade. I think you can see what's going on here with the stencil. And then what I will do is move this one down and I can line it up with the one underneath. And if I think I need to go back in with some more Seabrook to blend this out a little bit, I can easily do that. It's quite easy to line this stencil back up again. So let's have a little sneak peek at what's going on here. I need to add a little bit more just to these sections here. I just want the darker one on the edges. And then I'm going to wipe the ink off just with some paper towel, and that will pick up the residue of ink there. I'm going to put mist aside and come back in with Seabrook and just go over top of all of this. So let's peel this back to have a look. And I really do love the colour combination of Seabrook and Mist. If you look at the two colours on the ink pad, they are a similar type tone, so they do work quite well together, I think. So what I need to do now is align my stencil up, and it is fairly easy to do. I'm trying not to get my head in the camera view, so I think that looks pretty good to me. And then I'm going to mask this bit off here and do exactly the same thing on this portion of leaves with the mist, and then come back in with some Seabrook. And we'll move on to another panel. I'm going to do 3 panels on here, which I know I can cut down for all sorts of uses, which I'm going to show you towards the end of the video. There's so many applications that you can use from this type of stencil, and whenever close to my heart come out with stencils, I know that they're one of the first things that I put into my cart. They're very, very popular. And this is the part I love the best, doing the big reveal and having a look at the panel that I've created here. And you can see you really do need to support this and be conscious of which way you use your blending brush, because these elements here are quite fine and you don't want to crease them back at all. But how gorgeous does that look just with one stencil and adding a little bit more light and shade with a different color and a smaller blending brush. So now I'm just going to put this back onto my panel, and I'm going to show how you can create with the other layer on it. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing that I did before, masking this off here, and this time I'm going to come in with sage ink and I'm going to do the whole entire panel just like I did with the Seabrook, and then I'll be back to show you how you can do your layering. So you can see this is all done just with sage ink, and you could leave this just like it is because you do get the light and the shade. You don't have to add additional colours like I did with this one here with the Seabrook and then the mist, but I do want to add some rosemary on top of this to show you how the top layer of the stencil works. So this would be the base layer, and then it's quite easy to line this up. I look at the small little sprigs to line it up, so these are the easiest things I think to line everything up with. And once I've got that in place, I can add some more tape. So with the painter's tape, I run it over my hand just to make it a little less tacky so that I can put that down, especially when I've already inked everything up. Now I'm going to have a little bit of overlap here because I didn't quite put the next lot of stenciling up far enough, but that's okay. Leaves can overlap. That's not really a big problem. It's just something that you want to be mindful of if you want to keep the design going up. Just leave a bit more room between this section here and the next one you put if you're going to make a 12-inch piece. What I love about the Seabrook in the mist is that I think it's a really good colour combination for Australia with gum trees and things like that. And the next colour combination that I'm going to do on this panel here is going to be a good one for Australian leaves as well. So I've got my rosemary ink, and I'm just going to go in and do all the blending with this, and what you'll see it happening through the stencil. Only part of the leaves are actually being inked up, So by using a darker ink on top of the base layer, you're going to get a good differentiation between the layers. It all depends on how heavily you push your brush and also how much ink you load your brush up with as well, as to how much depth you're going to get. If you only want a light amount, then don't push down quite so heavily when you're blending the colour in. What I also love about this top layer of stencil is it has some cutouts to fill up these sections as well. So you're going to get a totally different look. So let's have a look at what we've got. I just love the colour tones. This colour combination is fabulous, I think, for Australia as well. And this is going to be a set that I'm always going to keep because I just love how it all works together. Now I'm going to do this exact step again, but with different color combinations, and this color might surprise you a little bit that I'm going to use. I'm going to come in with Mink and I'm going to combine it with a Rosemary. So exactly the same thing. I'm going to go through and ink up all of this section, and then I'll be back to do the layering over top. And before I do the big reveal here, I would like to know what colour combinations you think you would like to do. If you'd like to do brighter leaves, you can use pine ink to make the leaves even darker green. And you could do avocado as well if you wanted to do those tones. I think this is quite flexible. A lot of colour combinations can be used with this, and that gives a lot of use out of this one stencil because you can use it over and over and over again and have it look different each and every time. And with the thin cuts and the embossing folders, that means you can cut pieces out after you've inked them all up. You can line it up fairly easily with the die cutting. There's a little bit of fiddling involved, but it can be done. So really there are a lot of options and combinations that you could use to really get value for money out of this stencil. But I really love the mist, the grey and the rosemary together. I think it gives a really special look to these leaves. And of course, if you wanted to use this in autumn tones, you could do that as well. So if you like the reds, oranges, the browns, and the yellows, you could definitely make a whole heap of autumn leaves with this stencil and also with the thin cut and the embossing folder. And don't forget the stamp set. So the stamp set will put additional layers on here. But I think for this video, I don't have enough time to show you absolutely everything that you can do with this. But I do know that a couple of the other girls on the creative design team are going to use this set. So don't miss out on their videos at all because you'll get a whole heap of variation on what you can use this Sprigs and Leaves set with. I love how all of these have turned out, but rather than bringing in the stamp set and adding some more texture, I'm going to bring in my splatter box and give it a little bit of treatment with some white gloss spray. And I'm going to do the treatment to all three of these. And because I'm going to do a lot of splattering, I'm going to pour a little bit of this into my little container here, so that I can get more splatters done in less time. I'm just going to bring in my fan brush. You might not see this, it might go off camera, but I'm just dipping the fan brush in. And you can see I can get a result extremely quickly. And this really does save a lot of time, especially if you're working on a big 12 by 12 piece, even though I'm going to cut all these down and they're going to be used on different projects. So I think faster is definitely better when it comes to adding the white splatters. I'm going to set this aside to dry, and then I'm going to bring in my 6 by 8 Days of December book and put that page together using one of these combinations, and also show you some additional 12 by 12 layouts that I've already put together. So you can see I've done a little bit of trimming with one of the borders that I created. I actually cut it into an 8" by 1 1/4 inch strip. So I've got another piece of this to go on the other side. This is a 6 by 8 page that's going into my Days of December from 2022. I have quite a few photos and layouts that I'm yet to do in this. And if you were watching last year, the creative design team put out a sketchbook full of 6 by 8 sketches that can be used in a Days of December December type project, but it's also handy for any other 6x8 project you might be working on, or you can convert them into 11x8.5 as well. So for this one here, I've chosen this layout on page 11, and you can see we have all the measurements that you need and everything is clearly labeled. And I've actually added in a border strip here instead of just leaving that plain. So they're totally flexible to work whichever way suits you. I've got my border strip and I've trimmed a little bit of Seabrook glitter paper, and then my photo is going to go over top of this. I'm going to bring in a circle, so you can see I've cut a circle from that actual border as well. So I trimmed it to an 8-inch length and then trimmed it down, and I was able to cut a 2.5-inch circle from it. I think I could have cut a 3-inch circle, but it was a little bit big for this page. So that's going to sit here. And then I'm going to put another circle here. It had a couple of tags coming out of the side of the photo, and I was debating whether I put them up here like this, but I quite like how they look coming out the side. So I'm going to do that and bring this down so that then the red is on top of here as well, and I'll trim these off a little bit. And there is my date for this one, and I'll put a little bit of a story in here. So what I think I need to do is move this up a little bit. This is Four Seasons Winter, which I'm primarily using for this project, but I really wanted to bring in these sprigs and leaves as well, and I think I'm going to use those a little bit more throughout this project. And I had to buy a new wreath to put on the front door because when I got ours out to decorate, it had deteriorated badly, and by the time I went looking, there wasn't anything that I really liked. A lot of the gorgeous wreaths had gone, or they were too expensive, so I just bought this little cute star one to put on there, and I quite liked how it looked on the front door. So I'm going to adhere all of that down pretty much in that position. I've got enough room here to tell my story. Here's my 6x8 page with the stenciling piece cut out into a circle. I did tie some little bows with just baker's twine, and I attached those with some glue dots. I am saving my journaling for the most part to the end of this project because I want to use the clear shipping labels and I want to get as much printing on there as possible. I just love how this stencil has worked just by cutting a little strip of it, and then the circle here just finishes it off and brings the pattern across. So I'm going to bring in the other projects that I've done. At the moment, this is a single page spread, and so is the next one I'm going to show you. It's either going to be an opener for Christmas, or I will put a double page with it later on. This is just one border panel that I inked up with the sage and the rosemary, and it's cut at 1.5 inches with some white glitter paper, and stacking up the slimline alphabets on multiple pieces of white daisy rather than putting foam tape underneath them gives them a good solid look. It looks a bit like chipboard, and I love the little touches of glitter. I have left these pieces with no further treatment other than the inking and the white gloss splattering. And if you use autumn tones, I think gold splatters would work really well, but you could use gold splatters for this or silver splatters. Really, the options are endless. So the next one I've done, I've taken it up another level. So this is the mist and the rosemary, and instead of keeping the border strips, I've cut multiple circles out of one panel. So this was the inked up panel here, but you can see that I have cut various size circles from our circle thin cuts. I've cut all the sizes, and after I cut the main shapes, I went back in and just cut little sections of it out, and you can see some of these aren't actually whole circles, but when you tuck them under elements, no one's going to know that this circle is missing a piece underneath it. You can see I've left this clear of adhesive under here so that I can still put my photos, but tucking these around these strips works really well. Actually, this one here I think is the block alphabet. This is the slimline alphabet or the slim alphabet. They are no longer available, but I know a lot of us bought those, and I think it's a good reminder to keep using them. And you can see I've put those on multiple layers. There's 4 layers of white daisy underneath that to give them a nice solid base. And then I've taken it to another level again, and I've used the thin cut here. So I've just run this through with some Seabrook glitter paper and tucked those around the ornaments or the circles here. They sort of look like ornaments to me, and just made a really cute effect effect with that. And then I've come in with a white gel pen and done little dots around those. And yes, I've used some of those little tiny pieces that cut out here just to add a few more little leaves around there. And it's really easy to apply with a little piece of glue and the pickup tool. And I even kept this piece here to use on a card or another project because I'm not going to throw that away. It's gorgeous in and of itself. So that's what you can get if you get the thin cut. And as I said earlier, they're expected to be back in stock sometime this month, hopefully. The other pages I wanted to show you are pages that I completed from the recent May-June album retreat with Close to My Heart. This one's using the embossing folder. I'm sorry for the glare. I probably should take it out. I'll do that so that you can see it properly. This is using the embossing folder, and you can see you get the texture from the embossing folder, and then I've just put ink over the top. There are some leaves on here that are cut out with the thin cut just from White Daisy, and then there's inking over the top of that and also some white gel pen. And you might see these little circles poking out here. That's with the embossing folder and applying ink to the embossing folder and running it through so that you get this background with the sage, and the raised areas are in the White Daisy, which is what the colour is. There's so many things you can do with this set. And then this one here, I'll pull out this side as well so that you can see it, because I haven't shown these album retreat pages on camera. But you can see this is using the embossing folder. So you run your pieces through your die cutting machine on the emboss setting, and then you get these gorgeous textured pieces, and then you run some sandpaper over it. Because our color card stock has a white core, the white will come out, and that creates a fabulous effect, and that runs all the way across those two pages. So when you're looking at the embossing folder and the stencils and the thin cuts, they are all labelled as sprigs and leaves slimline elements, but they can definitely be used on scrapbooking pages, whether they be 12 by 12, 8.5 by 11, or in this case 6 by 8. I really love this whole collection and the way this has all been thought through with the stamp set as well, and how it all fits together so well. As I mentioned before, I'll have a link below to the playlist so you can check out the other creative design team girls and what they're bringing to you for Christmas in July. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, happy crafting and happy Christmas in July. Bye for now.